They reviewed all that, yes, sir.
And so have you reviewed those 302 documents that where the victims name the people who victimized them?
If I personally know, but the FBI has.
So how can you sit here and in front of the Senate and say there are no names?
I said
I named one today.
The director of the FBI just confirmed the files exist, then admitted he never read them. Here is exactly how that happened. 20 names, 100,000 pages of FBI files, and one day earlier, the director of this same bureau looked the entire United States Senate in the eye and said there was no credible information pointing to anyone beyond Epstein himself. The next day, a Republican congressman walked in and named one without even being asked. Someone decided not to read those files. By the end of this video, you will know who that was.
Gentleman, yields back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent request.
Gentleman's recognized.
So I've got 4 documents I'd like to introduce into the record. The first one is Jeffrey Epstein's sick story played out for years in plain sight. And Acosta is quoted in here saying, I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone. The second document is entitled, What Epstein's Bodyguard Warned About His CIA Connections. The third document is from Fox Digital. It's titled, Epstein's Private Calendar Reveals Planned Meetings with Obama Admin Official CIA Chief. And the last document is Wall Street Journal article that highlights Ehud Barak's 36 meetings with Jeffrey Epstein. He was the former Prime Minister of Israel and head of military intelligence for Israel.
What's up, family? You've seen this clip by now. It's everywhere. Thomas Massie standing at that microphone holding up documents, asking FBI Director Kash Patel about 20 names from Epstein victim testimony. And the media that left, the same people who never asked these questions for 4 years under Biden, are now running victory laps claiming they caught Patel in a cover-up. So let's slow down. Let's actually look at what was said, what was not said, and why this exchange tells you more about the bad faith of the media than it does about Kash Patel's integrity. Because here's the thing, if you only watch this clip that's getting clipped and shared, you miss the full picture, and the full picture changes everything. Let's set the scene. This is the House Judiciary Committee hearing, right? September 17, 2025, Kash Patel, the FBI director, is sitting there answering questions for 5 hours. 5 hours. And Thomas Massie, who I respect as a legitimate questioner, he's doing his job. He's asking oversight questions. Sorry, family. That's what representatives are supposed to do. So Massie brings up Patel's testimony from the day before, where Patel told the Senate there was no credible information pointing to anyone beyond Epstein himself. Massie then pulls out documents showing that inside the FBI's own files, there are FD 302 forms. That's FBI interview summaries, where victims named at least 20 men Epstein allegedly trafficked it to them too. Right, a bank CEO, a Hollywood producer, a royal prince, a rock star, 6 billionaires, right? Where these individuals, these victims were trafficked to, right? And these names are in the Bureau's own files, sitting there, and Massie asked Patel point blank, did you read them? And Patel said he personally had not. And that's the part the media clipped, and that's the part they ran with. And that's the part they're using to scream cover up. But here's what they're not telling you, family. Let's ask the real question together. Has any FBI director in the history of this country personally read every single FD 302 in a case file before testifying to Congress? No, of course not. That is not how the FBI works. That is not how any federal agency works. The FBI has thousands of agents, thousands of analysts, career investigators who spend years on these cases. The director oversees the Bureau. He does not personally read every interview summary before walking into a hearing. That would be like asking the CEO of a hospital to personally read every patient's my chart before a meeting with the board, right? It's not how leadership works. So the question isn't why Patel didn't read 20 FD 302s. The question is why the media is pretending that's a scandal.
He may have held that title when he met Epstein, and then yes.
Without objection, the gentleman will hold for a second. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one UC request. This is Judge Engelmeyer's decision from August in U.S. versus Epstein, stating the government's 100,000 pages of Epstein files dwarfs the 70-odd pages of Epstein grand jury materials.
Without objection, the gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, I watched some of your Senate hearing yesterday when Senator Kennedy asked you, you've seen most of the files, who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these women to besides himself? You replied, according to the transcript, there is no credible information that he trafficked them to anyone else. You also said somewhere in the hearing and here today that the problem is that the case files are constrained by limited search warrants from 2006 to 2007 and that the non-prosecution agreement hamstrung future investigations. Those constraints only apply to Southern District of Florida. They do not apply to Southern District of New York, the location of the 2019 sex trafficking indictment, which produced many things, including a series of FD 302 documents. According to victims who cooperated with the FBI in that investigation, these documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to, victims including minors such as Virginia Roberts Giuffre, may she rest in peace. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada. We know these people exist in the FBI files, the files that you control. I don't know exactly who they are, but the FBI does. Have you launched any investigations into any of these people, and have you seen these 302 documents?
Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information. And we're working with Congress not only to divulge that information and produce it to you, but any investigations that arise from any credible investigation will be brought. There have been no new materials brought to me launching a new indictment.
Before Massie said a single word about what he wanted from Patel, he put 4 documents into the permanent congressional record. Each one is damaging on its own. Together, they do something specific. They make it impossible for Patel to claim the intelligence angle was speculation. The first quotes Alexander Acosta, the prosecutor who handed Epstein 13 months with work release in 2008, while his victims were legally silenced. Acosta told Trump transition officials he was instructed to back off. The reason? Epstein belonged to intelligence. Leave it alone. That did not come from a message board. It came from inside the deal. The second is Epstein's own bodyguard raising CIA connections from inside the inner circle, not an outsider's theory. The man who was paid to be in every room. The third is Epstein's private calendar, scheduled appointments, not rumored meetings, with a CIA chief and Obama administration officials. After his 2008 conviction, he still had access. The fourth is the Wall Street Journal, 36 meetings between Jeffrey Epstein and Ehud Barak, former Prime Minister of Israel, former head of Israeli military intelligence. 36. Barak flew on the plane, visited the homes, after the conviction. Not one person in that room objected when this entered the record. Patel sat there and heard every word. 24 hours earlier, he had told the full United States Senate there was no credible information pointing to anyone else. He said if that evidence existed, he would have brought charges yesterday. Now 4 documents sit in the congressional record suggesting otherwise, and Massie was not finished.
So is the loophole here, or is it your assertion that these victims aren't credible, that the 302s maybe didn't produce credible statements that rise to a probable cause?
It's not my assertion, sir. It's the assertion of 2 different United States attorneys' offices from 3 separate administrations who investigated those same materials in lifetime.
Are the 302 documents?
Real talk, family. Let's look at what Patel actually said. He didn't dodge. He didn't lie. He pointed to the truth. He said it wasn't his personal assertion that there was no credible information. You heard him say it. It was the assessment of 3 separate U.S. attorneys from 3 separate administrations. That's what I was waiting for him to say. Because if you think about that, 3 different prosecutors under different leadership all came to the same conclusion. And Patel, being the honest man that he is, and I'm not going to sit here and claim I personally reviewed every document in a case this massive, but here's what he did say. He said this administration has released more Epstein-related material than any administration before. And that's why I say this is the most transparent administration we ever had in history. More than the Biden Department of Justice, more than the Trump's administration's first term, and more than anyone. And that's not a claim you can just wave away. That's a fact. And the House Oversight Committee just released tens of thousands of records. The Epstein estate is providing additional documents. The FBI is releasing everything the courts have allowed. So when you hear the media scream and cover up, ask yourself this. If this administration is covering up, why are they releasing more than their predecessors? Why are they sitting for 5-hour hearings? Why? Why are they answering questions that the previous administration refused to answer for 4 years? You see, it doesn't add up. And that's because the narrative isn't about transparency. It's about politics. It's about hurting Kash Patel from a reputation standpoint. It's about hurting this administration. It's about making sure that the people who actually want to see the truth get distracted by manufactured controversy. Because the simple fact is, if you can have a manufactured controversy that can distract you from actually seeing the facts, not to mention that they're fighting the courts tooth and nails because the courts want to decide what's deemed able to release and what's not. But if you want the situation in its entirety when it comes to the Epstein files, then just let them all be released. Now, and of course, redact the names, cover up the names and the victims out of respect for those individuals, right? And their privacy, unless they consent. But come on now. And now here's where we need to take a step back and look at the bigger picture, family, because this is not just about one hearing. This is about a pattern. I'm a patterns guy, and I get pissed off when I keep seeing patterns and there's no solution. I mean, I'm pretty sure we all do. How many times you've been in a relationship where you're still seeing the same pattern happen in different forms of situations, but it's the same problem? And it's only getting bigger and bigger, and then it makes minor situations bigger than they have to be. I know you have experiences in your own life, or even within yourself doing the inner work. Well, from my own anecdotal experiences, you get pissed with yourself because it's like, why do I keep sitting there doing that same thing, making more problems for myself, getting in my own way? I need to change how I approach. I need to change my mindset. And for 4 years under the Biden administration, the Epstein files sat in a drawer, right? And the FOIA requests were stonewalled. And for those who don't know what the FOIA is, it's basically a Freedom of Information Act, an abbreviation, right? Journalists who tried to investigate were ignored. We don't have that many of truthful journalism taking place nowadays. But the Department of Justice under Merrick Garland had every opportunity to release these documents, and they choose not to. They choose secrecy. They chose silence. And nobody in the media was screaming cover up then. Nobody was holding hearings. Nobody was demanding answers. But now under a Trump administration, under Kash Patel, the files are coming out. Documents are being released. Hearings are happening. And suddenly the media wants to pretend they care about Epstein victims. And suddenly they want to pretend they are outraged. Well, let me ask you something. Where was that outrage in 2022? Where was that outrage in 2023? Where was the 5-hour hearing when the Biden Department of Justice, sorry, family. Where was the 5-hour hearings when the Biden Department of Justice was sitting on these exact same files? It didn't happen because the media doesn't care about Epstein victims. They care about using Epstein to attack political opponents. That's the ugly truth. And Thomas Massie, to his credit, I believe he's asking legitimate questions. He's doing oversight. That's his job. But the media's framing of this exchange is pure bad faith. And this is why we're having this conversation. Lately, I've been having conversations really exposing the mainstream liberal media to show you guys, justifying why I do the work that I do, to give you guys the truth. No narrative, no spin, no agenda, just truth and us having a conversation, but not telling you what to think. But we need to have conversation in its entirety with the truth, even if we agree to disagree. So they're taking a moment of honest admission. Patel saying, I haven't read every file, and they're turning it into a headline that says cover up. When in reality, Patel's answer was the most honest answer any FBI director has ever given on this topic. He didn't pretend, he didn't spin, he told the truth. Most of these individuals are so busy idolizing their titles of FBI director and worshiping it. The simple fact is they don't have they have the label, but they don't have the character that keeps them to be honest and uphold integrity. So they'll sit there and act like they know it all in the name of their label that they're idolizing as being FBI director. But we don't have that here with Kash Patel. And now the truth is being used against them. That's the world we live in, family. No agenda, no narrative, just receipts. And the receipts show that this administration is the most transparent on Epstein in American history, like I've said. right?
It's in the FBI's possession.
They reviewed all that. Yes, sir.
And so have you reviewed those 302 documents where the victims name the people who victimized them?
If I personally know, but the FBI has.
So how can you sit here and in front of the Senate and say there are no names?
I said all.
I named one today.
4 words. That is all it took. Not a motion, not a subpoena, not a formal investigation launched by the Bureau Patel controls. A Republican congressman stood up, said a name out loud, and sat back down. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, named in victim testimony, held inside FBI files, spoken into the congressional record on live television. Now look at what came just before those 4 words. Massie asked Patel directly, "Have you personally reviewed the 302 documents where victims name the men who victimized them?" Patel's answer was not yes. His answer was not no. His answer was, "If I personally know, but the FBI has." That sentence does not make grammatical sense because the thought never completed. He started to say, "I don't know if I personally," and stopped. What replaced it was a pivot to the institution. The FBI has, not me. The FBI. The director of the FBI, sitting on 100,000 pages of Epstein files, had not personally read the statements in which victims named the men Epstein brought to them. He used 3 administrations as a shield. He called it the assertion of past prosecutors. But none of those prosecutors are the FBI director today. He is. The files are in his building. The names are in those files. And by his own account, he has not read them.
I said we are not in the practice at the Department of Justice FBI of releasing victims' names. That is not what we do. We are also not in the habit of releasing incredible information. That's not what we do. But multiple authorities have looked at the entirety of what we have.
Okay, I got to move on here. Were you present when the AG had the White House event when she released the binders to social media influencers?
I was, yes.
So if you're willing to meet with social media influencers who stood to benefit from the sensational and sad stories of these victims, will you meet with the victims as well?
The FBI will meet with anyone who has new information.
Will you personally meet with them?
The FBI and the professionals who are handling the cases will.
Were you instructed that it was important to release the documents to the Oversight Committee on the day of my introduction of the discharge petition to release these files?
I don't know what day that was, so no.
Well, they were released that day, and there were victims' names who weren't redacted because they were in such a rush, and the victims are not happy about that. Have you investigated any of the CIA connections? Have you seen the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein? And if you wanted to see it, would they show it to you?
Well, I can speak for the FBI, and that's presuming there's a CIA case file. And I've reviewed everything that the interagency, not I, the FBI, that was provided to us.
Would you be willing to look at the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein?
If there is such a file, and if it has not already been turned over to the FBI will look at any new investigative leads.
Have you made any progress on the pipe bomb investigation January 6th? And have you made any progress on the motive of the Las Vegas shooter?
As to the first, it's an ongoing investigation, and we have made progress. As to the second, sir, I'll have to get back to you.
All right, let's get even deeper because this matters. The question everyone should be asking is not whether Kash Patel read every FD 302. That's a distraction. The real question is this. Why did the media spend 4 years not asking any questions? And now suddenly they care? Why did the Biden DOJ sit on these files and face zero scrutiny? Why did the same outlets that are now screaming cover up at Patel spend years defending the very institutions that buried these documents? It's because the media is not in the truth business. They are in the narrative business. And the narrative they want right now is that the Trump administration is corrupt, that Kash Patel is a political appointee protecting his friends, and that nothing has changed. But the facts tell a different story. Under Patel, the FBI has released more documents. Under Patel, the FBI is sitting for hours of testimony, as you can see. Under Patel, the FBI is cooperating with Congressional oversight in ways it never did before. And the media's response to transparency is to attack it, as you see. So think about how backwards that is. A leader who hides things gets praised. A leader who opens things up gets attacked. That's not accountability. That's weaponized cynicism, right? Cynicism. There we go. And it's designed to make you believe that nothing ever changes, right? Weaponized cynicism. I always botch that word, but you get my point, right? And the no one is never honest that the system is always rigged, right? It's designed to make you believe that nothing ever changes. No one's never honest. The system's rigged. But fam, that's exactly what they want you to believe, right? With their nonsensical things they say, right? Say a lot of nonsensical things. Look at Kamala Harris, right? Because if you believe that, you stop paying attention. You stop holding people accountable. And you stop looking at the receipts. And the receipts here are clear. This administration is doing more than any previous administration, full stop. So let's talk about what real oversight looks like, because this is important. Thomas Massie asked a legitimate question. He wanted to know if Patel's statements to the Senate was accurate given the documents in the FBI's own files, and Patel's answer that he was relying on the assessment of 3 U.S. attorneys. That's not a dodge. That's actually how the system is supposed to work. And the FBI director is not an investigator. He's not a prosecutor. He's an administrator. His job is to oversee the bureau, to set priorities, to make sure the career professionals are doing their jobs, like set the rules. And when he's asked about the contents of a specific case file, he relies on the assessments of the people who actually worked that case. 3 attorneys, 3 separate administrations, all came to the same conclusion. Now, if Massey wants to challenge that conclusion, that's his job. He can subpoena the FD 302s. He can call the U.S. attorneys to testify. He can hold hearings on the specific evidence. That's legitimate oversight. But turning a routine exchange about the limits of what an FBI director personally knows into a national scandal, that's not oversight, that's theater. And the media is happy to play along with it because it gives them a story that hurts the administration. So here's my question to you, family. Do you believe that an FBI director should personally read every FD 302 in every major case before testifying to Congress? Or do you believe that's a standard that's been applied or being applied selectively to hurt Kash Patel? Because the answer tells you everything about whether you look for truth or looking for a reason to be angry. And here's the thing that really gets me, family. The same people who are screaming about Patel not reading the files are the same people who spent years telling us that Epstein's death was a conspiracy, that the intelligence committee was hiding the truth, that the Biden DOJ was stonewalling. And now when the administration finally starts releasing information, they attack the person who's actually doing it. It doesn't make sense unless you understand that their goal is not transparency. Their goal is to discredit anyone who threatens the status quo. Kash Patel threatens status quo because he's actually releasing the documents, actually testifying, he's actually cooperating, and that terrifies the people who benefited from the old system of secrecy. That's the only thing I can think of as I'm, you know, speaking on this, because they manufacture a scandal out of a nothing exchange. They clip a 10-second answer and ignore the 5-hour hearing. And they pretend that the FBI director not personally reading every interview summary is a cover up, when in reality it's just how the job works. And they count on you not knowing that. They count on you being angry. They count on you sharing the clip without asking questions. Don't let them do that to you, family. Look at the receipts, look at the context, look at what's actually released and what was actually said and what was actually done, and then ask yourself who is really hiding something. So here's the truth I want you to sit with for a second. Kash Patel is not a perfect human. He's not going to be perfect in every answer. He's human. He's running a massive agency on top of that. But he is doing more to release information about the Epstein case than any FBI director in history. And instead of being thanked for that transparency, he's being attacked for it. Tells you everything you need to know. Right? Tells you everything you need to know about the people doing the attacking. They don't want transparency. They want a political scalp. And they want to slow down the momentum of this administration, as you see even with the Save America Act taking place. They want you to believe that nothing has changed so that you give up hope. But family, that's not what the Bible tells us. Luke chapter 8, verses 17 says, "For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out in the open." And that's the truth of this moment. The hidden things are coming to light. The files are being released. The truth came out. And not because of any political party, but because what happens when you have leaders who actually care about accountability, the concealment of the past is being exposed by the transparency of the present. And no amount of media spin can change that. So here's the life wisdom for the non-spiritual members, right? Family members, I should say. When you're doing the right thing, the people who benefited from the wrong thing will always attack you. Always. It's not a sign that you're wrong. That's a sign that you're effective. Patel is being attacked because he's actually releasing files, and the Biden DOJ was praised because they hid them. It reminds me, as they say in the Bible, that when good is evil and evil is, how can I say this? When evil is good and good is evil. That's what that remind me of, right? Because the louder the attack, the closer you are to the truth. So don't let the noise confuse you. Look at the results and look at who's releasing documents and who's sitting on them. The only question is whether you're willing to see them. Now, I want to ask you this, yes or no? Do you trust this administration's transparency on the Epstein files more than the last administration's? Let me know in the comments. Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your post notifications, spread that peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate, family. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.